What's up, creeps? I'm Exorcist.
And I'm Boo.
And we are Scurred. So we gather here today to bring you our sheer disappointment. That was heavy. In the Fear Street movies that are on Netflix. So I did the first video solo because I got tired of waiting for the teenager. And we watched the other two independently. But we collaborated to come together to do this video, and they are...
They're poop.
They're poop. That's the poop icon. So, and you guys know us. I mean, we're not the type that wants to rain on anybody's parade, but there's plenty of reasons why this whole series was poop. And we're gonna get into it. We're gonna deep dive into this film series. All three of them, we're going to start to finish and doing this one video because we don't have all of the extra time to make extra videos for extra poop.
Yeah.
Is that harsh? Am I being harsh?
No, I really don't think they were that good.
So, let's go over the titles here on this thing. Fear Street. Basically started out, as you can see in the first one, in 1994. And in my review with that one, I was confused. I really didn't know what was going on. I mean, it was decent, but I was like, I got to see what happens. I mean, I'm that invested. By the time you watch the first one, you're invested enough that you have to see the second one.
Right. I mean, you've gone this far. Why not just finish?
And by the time you get done with the second one, you're like, all right, I guess I'm so invested that I have to watch the third one. And they're all, I can't say all, because I think the second one was decent, but they're all pretty terrible. We go through three different time spans, 1994, 1978, and then way back to 1666 with Sarah Fear. And I had really high hopes for 1666, but
that just didn't pan
out. No, it didn't pan out. So let's go, before we go into overall plot, let's jump in and let's talk about the type. I think we already kind of mentioned it, but there's a couple subtypes that we could call this. I think it fits into the paranormal, and what else?
I think definitely, at least for the last one, it could definitely be considered demonic. And definitely slasher.
Yep, I think slasher fits in there. We talked about, before we started recording, we talked about the second one, 1978, and how it had a very familiar feeling. And we determined that was...
It was very Friday the 13th-esque.
Yeah, see, you're, at Crystal Lake, and you're in the camp there, and everybody has their butt cheek high gym shorts. You know, it was very 70s. Of course, it was 1978. It was supposed to feel that way, but I don't know. It felt very familiar, and it felt very boring.
Right. It's things that you've seen in a lot of movies already. I mean, it's basically like the knockoff version of Friday the 13th. And at this point, we've seen it so many times already that it's just like, okay, well, can we do something different?
Yeah. So going into it plot-wise, now what they tried to do in this Netflix trilogy event is they tried to start you off in the current, take you back to the events that led up to that, and then go way the heck back to 1666. So as far as I'm concerned, I felt it was very unnatural.
Right. I mean, I feel like, and I think that the concept was good. You want to do something different. You want to switch it up. Well, maybe if we start in the present and then with each movie we go further back. But I feel like it just, like you said, it's very unnatural feeling. Like, I feel like your first thought is kind of like, well, why wouldn't you just start in the past so we know what the heck is going on and how we got here?
Yeah, and they give you little tidbits throughout all of the episodes. You go back to Sarah Fear of, and look, this is the story that's leading to it. But it was a very chaotic way to go back in time.
Right. I feel like it just could have been done so much more simply. It could have been easier to comprehend, I feel.
And there's a ton of film series that kind of do the same thing. Like, even if you look at the Marvel universe, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you could go through and you could watch those movies all the way back to the beginning. I mean, we're talking go way back into like the 80s and start with Captain Marvel. And you could watch those and it wouldn't be so confusing to you that you couldn't understand what was going on. If you started these in 1966 and then watched 78 and then 94, you'd have no idea what the hell's going on. Because even though they're supposed to go essentially in that order, the way they cut back to the present and cut back to the 70s and cut back to all these other times, it's hard to follow.
Right. I feel like if it had just been one standalone movie, it would have made more sense than the three of them being put together in this very kind of flashback way. Like, okay, well, we're going to show you what's going on right now, but then we're going to show you what's going on in the past, and then we're going to go back to the present, and then in the next movie, we're going to show you the past, but then we're going to flash up to the present again. Like, it's just, even saying it confuses me.
Yeah. One other thing, before we get into super overall plot, when we're talking about the timelines and everything, is, we're not your average, in my opinion, we're not your average horror movie watcher. We watch a lot of horror films, like a ton.
Right. I think I've seen all of them that are on Netflix at this moment.
So if you confuse us, people that are pretty good at following the scary bouncy ball, Pennywise's little red ball kind of thing, you can confuse anybody. So your standalone, just watch this show is like, what? It left a lot to be desired.
Right. I feel like even if this had been like the first scary movie you watched, and you don't, I don't know, you don't watch a lot of horror films that kind of bounce around and show different timelines, different plots. This is going on while this is going on. I feel like if you had just watched it alone, it would kind of ruin the rest of horror movies, because you're going to feel like that's all they are. Like, if you base every horror movie off of this one, it's going to just seem like, why watch horror movies? They're so confusing.
Yeah. And I think it was supposed to be a smart play. Like, I thought that, they were like, oh, we're going to be clever and tell it this way. But it didn't come off clever. It just came off confusing. So I definitely think that they missed the mark on the movie. But let's talk overall plot. As we get into this thing, we go way back to kind of the interesting part of this, like I told you in the first movie, or in the first video that I recorded. This is all based on Fear Street, which is adapted by an R.L. Stine book series. Love R.L. Stine. And maybe that's where this came from. Like, his stuff, as cool and fun as it is to read, isn't really scary.
Right. I mean, R.L. Stine is famous for his Goosebumps books that I was reading when I was in second grade. Like, it's not scary. I was reading
when I was in second grade.
It's not. And, maybe for, like, younger people, it is a good way to kind of step into the horror world. But they're just not scary.
Yeah. When in the first video that I recorded, I said, this is very teeny bopper horror, teenage horror. And I think I missed the mark there a little bit even as well, because I have a teenager, and she wasn't really even in love with it. So maybe it's like a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I think
production.
Holter would like it.
No.
He'd probably get bored, though.
Okay, let's jump into plot. We got some ground to cover with all three of these, but overall plot, we start off in 1994, and we have some mall employees. It's closing time. They're throwing down the gates, blah, 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 blah. One of them goes bonkers and stabs the other one to death.
Yeah.
That's all the plot. It's
That's
over.
the whole movie.
No, but they start showing the contrasts in this first film between Shadyside and Sunnyvale, And you can see that Shadyside has had its fare of horror and slashings and murders, and Sunnyvale is like the complete opposite. It's always nice. It's always pleasant. No crime ever happens there. So it's really starting that the first one, to its credit, starts to build this storyline about, good side, bad side.
Right. I mean, it almost feels like, and this may not be the correct way to put it, but like in my brain, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're going to show you two different towns, but one is like super ghetto and the other's like fancy pants, rich, privileged people. And I think that was a good way to start it. I feel like it started out really well. Like, okay, let's portray these two different towns. Let's show how they're different. And like, we're going to try and portray that something deeper is going on in Shadyville.
Yeah. And they did pretty good. They basically brought it out to football team and, this side versus that side, and you're all a bunch of losers. No, you're all a bunch of losers. And that really set the storyline to bring out the main characters. Dina is in love with Sam. Sam just traveled to Sunnyvale, and now there's drama, blah, blah, blah. Basically at the end of this one, she being Sam ends up possessed, and they're trying to go back and figure out why. The only way they can figure out why is to go back and talk to a gal that has lived through all of this, and that's Ziggy.
Right. And I feel like, I don't know, throughout the movies, Ziggy's appearance almost becomes kind of confusing at points. I mean, I like, she is a key character and a big part of the movie, but I feel like they just added her into parts that kind of almost didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it was like they were trying to introduce her, but struggling to figure out how to do it the right way. But yeah, basically with the introduction of Ziggy and going back to say, hey, what was your story? That's where part 2 comes in. So Fear Street Part 2, 1978, they go back to summer camp. And even within Camp Nightwing, as it's called, very original, they have the segregation. Okay, they have the Shadyside on one side and Sunnyvale on the other. And, they even in 1978, they had the two complete splits, and they did it in camp. They did capture the flag against each other and all of these different things. So they continue even in the second film to showcase good, bad.
Right. And I feel like, I don't know, in my own opinion, it's almost kind of twisted to have that put on the children, like, oh, you're from this place where all of this bad stuff has happened. You guys are bad people. Like, that's almost kind of what it seemed like. And then, oh, like, we're from this place that never has had a murder and these bad things never happen. Like, we're the good people and you're the bad people. You
know what that is, though? Kids. You're all a bunch of jerks.
No.
No, I mean, there's, think of your grade school rivalry. I went to this old rundown beat up school, and it was the Greeley Hawks. And any school that was the rich kids were our rivals. I, for lack of a better way to put it, was Shadyside. So.
Yeah, must have been the 80s. I don't know.
Yeah, must have been the 80s. So, jumping back into 1978 as we get into the plot, we're looking at summer camp, lots of things going on. Ziggy and her sister are both there. Her sister is a goody two-shoes. Ziggy is kind of the outcast on the outside. Nobody likes her except for one guy from the Sunnyvale side of the camp. And they actually get along pretty well, pull some practical pranks on each other, so on and so forth. What we do see a lot of in the second one is downtime. I mean, there's not a lot of running, horror, stabbing, screaming, killing until the end.
Right. I feel like it almost, for probably the better first 3/4 of the movie, just seemed very like we kind of ran out of ideas for the second one, so we're just going to prolong this as long as we possibly can.
And I feel like with the exception of the first one, which started off with a bang and ended flat, number 2 and number 3 stayed flat for 80%. And then in the last 20%, it was like, oh, now things are happening.
Right, but even
I
when they did,
almost fell asleep.
Yeah. Even when they did happen, though, in that 20%, it was very confusing because they were putting it in just the last 45 minutes of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So the one good thing, and it's funny because each one of these ends with something that leads to just enough to make you want to watch the next one. The one good thing about when 1978 was over is we'd been properly introduced, at least in part, to Sarah Fear. And Sarah Fear is the witch. Which witch? That witch. The witch, who actually isn't a witch. Spoiler. I don't care. Because it's poop. And what we're doing is we're telling you, don't watch it.
Right.
Don't waste your time. But let's get into it. 1666. See how clever that is?
Yeah, I feel like that's supposed to be a play.
Yeah.
Not a very clever one.
No, not very original for sure. So basically they start here. They brought the severed hand back to the body of Sarah Fear, and then all of a sudden Dina starts getting all in her head, and she goes back into the whole thing as Sarah Fear herself and gets to see it from Sarah's perspective. So 1666 begins, and it's just boring.
Yeah, I think I like, because we watched the last one together, and I remember I was just laying on the couch like, why am I watching? Can I go do something else? I wasn't very inclined to watch the first part of the movie because I have a really short attention span, and that did not keep it at all.
No, it was a slow story. There was just some weird happenings. I mean, the scariest part of that whole movie is when the pigs were eating, or the mom pig was eating baby pigs.
Yeah, I feel like that was the part
scary.
that was like,
And that was the only part, in my opinion, that was scary out of any of the 3 films. They just weren't scary.
Right. I mean, I feel like toward the end there was like a little bit of suspense because you're like, there's no way this is going to work. Like, there's no way this plan is going to work.
It's interesting because as 1666 was wrapping up, I was like, okay, it's over. But man, I have way too many questions. Not that I really care about the answers, but I still have a lot of questions.
Right. I mean, he even looked at me and was like,
is that it?
I have so many questions.
Yeah, what's happening? And all of a sudden it goes, boom, 1994, part 2. And it's like, okay, so this is how we're going to end the whole thing. We're going to bring it all back together. Dana's going to snap out of her vision, and then they're going to figure out what happened to the Shady Side curse and fix it.
Which also in itself was very confusing. I get it. I get the plot. I get what they were trying to do, but I don't think they did it very well. In my honest opinion.
Yeah, we're trying to pull off a bunch of nice guys. That was punny, whether you realized it or not. And figure out how they have all of these connections and history towards Shady Side and the Shady Side curse. And then we figure out all of the goods, as they're called, the good family, were actually bad.
You know what? I just 2 dots I just now connected. Okay, the goods are from Sunnyside, Shady, Sunnyvale. I don't even know. That's how bored I was. And the fears were from Shady Side. And that didn't click until just now.
Yep. Yeah, fear, good.
You should.
All of it was bad. Yeah, just not great. I mean, we got a mid-credit scene. Someone is, picking up the satanic book, and the witch whole thing might start. Who knows? who knows what's going to happen from here. What I'm hoping we don't see is a Fear 2004. Because I don't care. And I probably won't watch it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. That's still before my time.
Yeah, it is, actually. So I don't know. We went through the overall plot. Let's talk about best scares. And that's kind of the fun part with this one.
The pig. The pig was the best scare.
And that was probably the only scare. There was not one time throughout this entire movie that I find myself scared.
Right. I mean, there is a little suspense in which you're like, oh, like I really don't know. And then it's over that fast. So I don't even think it's enough to say that it was even a suspenseful movie. It was over and done with in seconds.
And one thing that bothered me, when we talk about scares, is you watch Nightmare on Elm Street, and you have Freddy Krueger, and you see this bad guy, and he's terrifying, and he's in your dreams, and you never know who's going to pop up, and it's somebody that you can remember and you can be scared of. Can you even name one of the killers in this movie? No, she can't. And guess what? I can't either. You know why? Because there was the potato sack guy. Again, hello. Friday the 13th. Like,
right. I feel
part
like
one, the guy had a bag on his head. There's no bad guys that really stand out as scary and memorable.
No, and they weren't scary or memorable, but I feel like that was the killers a little bit. A little tiny, like that much. The killers, it's kind of, that's the one thing I remember the most is how they portrayed where these killers were coming from. I mean, ultimately, a family tree. The killers, the people who ultimately started this whole thing, they all came from the same family line. And I think that was the biggest thing that I remember. But they weren't scary. I mean, one of them was literally a cop. You aren't scared of cops, usually.
I am. But the killers weren't even the goods. They would write in stone or say it to, Shibalba or whoever.
Beelzebub.
Yeah. That, this is the name, and they'd write it in stone, and that person would become the killer. I mean, the goods weren't even the killers. They were just the witches.
They were basically just making deals with the devil, and then, they'd be like, okay, this person, and then that person would kill other people for them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, snap. Boom. So there's no memorable characters in there, as far as I'm concerned. Even the main characters really aren't that memorable.
No, I mean,
you don't build a feel or relationship with anybody in these films.
No, and that's one of the biggest problems I had. I mean, in so many horror films, for me especially, I feel like this connection with a lot of the main characters, and there's these people that you like. It's kind of like a one-sided relationship, like they don't even know you exist, but you feel so attached to them, and like you don't want to see anything bad happen to these people. And in these movies, the main character died. That sucks, I guess. I didn't feel a connection with any of them. There was nothing that drew me to them. There was nothing that made me want to make sure they stayed around.
Yeah, so we kind of covered ending approval. Let's just drop into overall Scurred. Let's give this thing a rating. You can go first this time. Your number might even be better than mine, probably, if you give it a number.
Am I allowed to go into the negatives? Because
no, don't go in the negatives. But if it's less than 1, it's poop.
It's just poop. And
I concur. It's poop. The Scurred factor on a scale of poop to oh my god, it's really scary is 0. I mean, it's not scary.
Bambi was scarier than this movie.
It's true. Someone used that line before and they were smart. It was me.
I know.
So, you know, it's not scary. It's nothing that's going to keep you up at night. You know, is it a little kid friendly scary movie? Not really. There's a lot of stuff in there that, you know, again, it was very 80 horrors film. There's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and kids don't need to see that anyway. So yeah, I mean, and then sometimes, even if something's not really scary, what can happen is it can have a really good story. So I'll bump it up a little bit and give it a couple numbers because the story was good.
Right.
Kind of like the Conjuring 3 that we just did. Was it super scary? No, but the story was really good. So I got a higher nod. I can't even do that with this one.
No, I mean, there was zero suspense. The story was confusing as everything. I mean, just throw a bunch of toddlers in a room. That's how confused I was. Probably even more so.
Yeah. So overall, you know, 1 to 10, we both give this one poop. All 3 films. The second one was the best one, but it was still poop. I can't honestly, with a good, clean conscience, recommend that people waste 5 or 6 hours of their life on this. If you want to be more entertained and do something scurrier than this, like pick up quilting. That's terrifying compared to this. Like sitting in a chair with my little crochet needles or something freaks me out, man. Your Street Part 1, 2, and 3, it's not there for me.
I don't even remember what the scientific name, but it's like you're scared of holes. Holes are scarier than these movies.
You just make it up, like holophobia. Holyphobia.
I feel like that's people who are scared of Jesus.
No, that's not true. Nobody's scared of Jesus. So yeah, overall, in good, clear consciences, we can't recommend this to you. We encourage you, move on. Netflix, what were you thinking? What were you thinking?
They
weren't thinking. I just didn't love it. I didn't love it. I don't like it. Move on with your lives. Anything else to add?
Please don't watch these movies unless you feel like being bored for 6 hours. Please.
Start a stamp collection. The post office is scarier. I can give you a list of things scarier than this, and they're not scary. So, I think that's it. That's it for me. Is that it for you?
I do believe so.
All right. Well, as we always say, I'm Exorcist.
And I'm Boo.
And until next time,
Sleep tight.